Here at the Marines Memorial, we honor the legacy of military service. We maintain a tribute memorial wall with the names of the youngsters who have given their lives in Iraq and Afghanistan since 9/11. This is part of our living memorial, a place where the loved ones of the fallen can come, where they know their loved ones are remembered, and where it's a safe place. These past 11 years, we have held an event to bring the parents of the fallen here to the Marines Memorial to help them with the grieving process. We call it our Gold Star Parents event. Afterwards, many of the parents come back. They return to the wall and they take the elevator to 10M and they stand in front of the wall. In silence, they search for the name of their loved son or daughter. And it's heartwarming to see them want to touch the particular brick that has their son or daughter's name. In some cases, it's heart-wrenching, though, when they can't reach it. And they'll get somebody to boost them up so the mother can trace over the name. It becomes so visible how unnatural it is for parents to outlive their children. Our Gold Star Parents event was featured this year, April the 24th, on 60 Minutes. Scott Pelley, the 60 Minutes correspondent, told me that he was going to make us proud. He sure did. Feedback has been terrific. It has even caused us to think about being more inclusive with the names on the wall for 9/11, to include the victims in the Pentagon who were serving our country when that plane hit, or at least to include the parents in our annual event. We all have our own memories. In the past, I've shared my memories with you, and I told you before that I know the name of the very first Marine who died carrying out my orders. John Anthony Vergalito, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. I hope you appreciate the impact it has on a leader when you give an order for a man or a woman to carry it out and they lose your life carrying out their orders. It's something you don't accept easily, and part of you dies when your Marines die. Not all of our casualties in war die on the battlefield, and not all the wounds suffered in combat can be stitched up and covered with a bandage. Many of our Marines and soldiers continue to suffer from combat stress, and sailors and airmen too. They suffer from combat stress long after their combat experience. Many have committed suicide. Although unusual, I'd like to remember them too. Post-traumatic stress is what it's called. With repeated deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, problems began to surface with our Marine soldiers, sailors, and airmen when they come home. Because of the stigma of being treated for any mental illness, these men and women were not self-reporting. And indeed, they were behaving in strange ways, and their families brought it to people's attention in some cases. Post-traumatic stress in soldiers was something the mothers of the Greek Spartans worried about in 480 BC. Over time, it has had different names, such as soldier's heart during the Civil War, shell shock, combat fatigue, battle fatigue. I've learned it's very real, and anyone who experiences a really traumatic event is affected. Anyone who will be affected if they experience a really traumatic event. I reread General Vandegrift's memoirs. General A.A. Vandegrift, he was the commanding general of the 1st Marine Division that landed in Guadalcanal on 7 August 1942, the very first offensive operation our country had after Pearl Harbor, 9 months to the day. In his memoirs, he described an impact of his Marines, on his Marines, of the Japanese naval gunfire. His division is the only U.S. military unit or force to be subjected to enemy gunfire, naval gunfire. The Japanese fired 12 and 14-inch shells at the Guadalcanal Marines. Experts will tell you that naval gunfire is the most impactful on the psyche of the brain. The history of Memorial Day goes back to the Civil War, and General John Logan issued General Order Number 11, and flowers were placed on the graves of Union and Confederate soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery. That order is carried out each year, and it will be this Monday. In 1915, John McCrae, Major, Canadian Army, wrote a poem titled "In Flanders Field." He was a surgeon, and he was moved by the scenes of suffering on the battlefield of Flanders in Belgium, including the loss of one of his former medical students, on a battlefield where blood-red poppies were in full bloom, and they blossomed as no one had ever seen before. He wrote this poem about having to bury the student without the presence of a chaplain. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark her place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing, fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders field. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye bear faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders field. In response to Major McCrae's poem, Moina Michael replied with her own poem. O ye who sleep in Flanders field, sleep sweet to rise anew. We caught the torch you threw, and holding high we kept the faith of those who died. We cherish too the poppy red that grows on fields where valor's led. It seems to signal to the skies, the blood of heroes never dies. Miss Michael conceived the idea to wear red poppies on Memorial Day in honor of those who died serving the nation during war. And we continue the practice today. And so I have asked that each of you take that red poppy that's given and you wear it. Our nation is still engaged in a war against an enemy who wants to destroy our way of life. To some of us, that war is personal because we have friends and our loved ones serving. I recall General George Patton, his statement, "It is foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived." I know that the mothers and fathers wouldn't understand it completely, but I do thank God. I think Patton was right. I thank those men and women. I thank God they lived. I'll close by reading a poem written by Archibald MacLeish. It's in your program. You might want to follow me along. It is titled, "The Young Dead Soldiers Do Not Speak." Archibald MacLeish was a librarian of Congress. He was all during the Second World War. He was a veteran of artillery in World War I, and he knew what the horrors of combat are. "The young dead soldiers do not speak. Nevertheless, they are heard in the still houses. Who has not heard them? They have a silence that speaks for them at night, and when the clock counts, they say, 'We were young, we have died, remember us.' They say, 'We have done what we could, but until it is finished, it is not done.' They say, 'We have given our lives, but until it is finished, no one can know what our lives gave.' They say, 'Our deaths are not ours, they are yours. They will mean what you make them.' They say, 'Whether our lives are for our deaths, or for peace and a new hope, or nothing, we cannot say. It is you who must say this. We leave you our deaths. Give them their meaning. We were young, they say. We have died. Remember us.'"